Welcome. Today is Wednesday, the 7th of Cheshvan. We are currently continuing in the Sefer Halikutim, Tzemach Tzedek, the Encyclopedia of Chassidus of the Tzemach Tzedek, and we are in the section which is dealing with Umot, haOlam, the nations of the world, page Tov Kuf Lamed, which would be 530. Tov Kuf Lamed at the bottom. And this is from a discourse of the Tzemach Tzedek. Shaloi asanu, starting with a quote that is in the prayer of Aleinu, the very important prayer of Aleinu l'shabeach, which is said at the end of all prayers, at the end of the morning services, afternoon services, and evening services, and then some, like, for example, other services, sanctifying the new moon, or every 28 years, the cycle of the sun. So afterwards we say Aleinu. Aleinu is basically thanking Hashem for making us have the true knowledge and not worshiping idolatry as the nations of the world do. So in there, we say, Shaloi asanu, that he did not make us like the goyim of the lands of the world. Kiaf, because even though, Shechaviv Adam, so the Mishnah in Tractate Avos says that man is dear, precious. Shnivra b'tzelem, because he was created in the tzelem, in the mold that Hashem made. Koi al klolus min hamedaber. So although that in general refers to all of mankind, not only the Jew, which has the neshama, the soul, but in general, when we learn in Bereshis, of the creation of man, so there it says that man is made with a tzelem, that refers to humans. Mikol makim, yet nonetheless, sharsham mibchinas pnei adam shebemerkava. The source of what is the spiritual source for man, it is in the vision that Ezekiel saw, Yechezkel, chapter 1 in Yechezkel. So there was the Merkava, the godly chariot, and on it was the face of Adam. V'zeh gam kein lechasidei, and of course it says, this acronym which stands for Oivdei Kechavim Umazolois, but that's an oxymoron. It doesn't make any sense, because Chasidei means the pious, the righteous ones of the nations of the world, and Akum is idolaters. But it just became the common way, as we spoke many times, whether it's through the censorship or what have you. So obviously what it really should say is Chasidei Umot haOlam, of the nations of the world. But it says the acronym for those that worship the stars and constellations. At any rate, the righteous of the nations of the world, they too come from, their spiritual source is the face of Adam, of the Merkav, of the chariot. Aval harishayim, however, the wicked people, meaning the idolatrous goyim, nimshechu, they were drawn down, mibechinas, from the aspect referred to as kekoif bifnei Adam. Zoyar, chelik beis, kuf memches beis. So in the Zoyar, in the second volume, page 148b, there's an expression, there's a common expression called kekoif bifnei Adam, which a koif is literally a monkey. So there is an expression like a monkey looking at the face of a person. So even though we're talking about humans, but comparing them to the people that come from Pnei Adam of the Merkava, which includes the righteous Gentiles, so they're like monkeys. Avalat tzadikim, but the righteous, nimshachim, they are drawn mibechinas, from the aspect, from the level, valdmus akise, and on the image of the throne, Dmus Kemare Adam is an image like the likeness, it looks like Adam. So in other words, when we learn about the chariot in Yechezkel, and on top of the chariot is an image of an Adam, that is where the Jews come from, and that is where Chasidei Umot haOlam come from. Whereas the wicked ones do not come from there. Bitzalmenu. Now, if you go back to Genesis, Bereshis, by the creation of man. So there are two words used over there in chapter 1, verse 26, where it says, Vayemer Elikim, that Hashem said, Nase Adam, let's make man. Bitzalmenu Kidmusenu, using two words which mean basically in our likeness. That's Hashem talking. So Bitzalmenu would be with the mold that Hashem has made. And according to Rashi, that refers to the idea of intelligence, that man is an intelligent being. And Kidmusenu, like us, similar to us. Oh. So those two expressions that Tzemach Tzedek now explains according to Chassidus. Bitzalmenu, the first word, is Yehuda Ila'a. That acronym stands for Yehuda Ila'a, which means the higher level of godly unification. Kidmusenu, and the second word, is Yehuda Tata'a, the lower level of unification. And we've discussed this, but just as a quick reminder, very, very briefly, without getting into it, Yehuda Ila'a is the higher perspective of the oneness of Hashem, that Hashem Echad, meaning that nothing else exists, and Yehuda Tata is the lower perspective. In general, it's the perspective of the created being looking upwards, and even though we have the unification of Hashem Echad, but it's a lower level. Atem Kruim Adam. You are called Adam. Meaning not every human being is referred to as Adam, even though Adam means man, and biologically, every human being is a descendant of the original man of Adam Harishon. Yet, we have a verse that refers to Jews exclusively as being Adam. V'zeu asanu, and this is the meaning that we say in the Aleinu prayer, Shaloi asanu, that he did not make us. Asanu is Naase Adam. Same exact word. When they made this prayer of Aleinu, they're using the same exact word that Hashem uses in Genesis, in Bereshis, where he says, Naase, let us make Adam. Hu asanu v'lo yanochnu. Then we have another verse in Tehillim, in Psalms chapter 100. It says, Hu asanu, he, Hashem, made us, v'lo anachnu. Now actually that word is one of those words which is a kri and a ksiv, which means it's written one way, but the tradition that we have is that it's supposed to be read differently. Now in this case, for us it doesn't make a difference in the pronunciation because they're both pronounced the exact same way. The word v'loi, Lamed Vav or Lamed Aleph is the exact same pronunciation, but they mean two very different things. The way that it is written, V'loi, the way that it is written, V'loi, with an Aleph, means and not. And the way that it's read with a Vav is and we are. So you say, Hu asanu, he made us. And if you read it with a Vav, it means, and we are to him. But the way that it's written over here with the Aleph, it means he made us, v'lo yanachnu, and not us. We didn't make ourselves. Okay. And now he explains the two different readings of v'loi with an Aleph and with a Vav. Al yedei loi saseh. The loi, the negative, to say that not us, that is through the observance of the negative commandments, all the prohibitions, the 365. But v'loi, but when you read it with a vav, that we are to him, the positive way of reading it, al yidei mitzvahs aseh, that is through the positive commandments, the 248. So in other words, we have both readings in the verse. Veloy with an aleph means and we are not, meaning we need to observe and not transgress all of the don'ts, all of the negative, all the prohibitions. And then we say veloy anachnu, and then we are not. We're not transgressing. But if you read it with the vav, when we say we are, that means we are keeping and doing and observing actively the positive commandments. Ayin Torah or Reish Parshas Lech. How do you like that? That really works out. So then the Tzemach Tzedek sends us to look in the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, his discourse, in the book of Torah Or, which is the basic book of the Alter Rebbe on the Parshias of the Beis and Shmois, and which Parsha, he says in the beginning of Parshas Lech, which is this week's Torah portion. V'ayin Zohar Vayera Kuf Tesvav, and then he tells us to take a look in the Zohar and the portion of Vayera, page 115. Al Pasuk on the verse, and then the way that the manuscript they have from the Tzemach Tzedek, it says V'yesh, but at the bottom, the compilers of this, the publishers, they make a note over here that it should read Vayas. In other words, there's an ayin missing. Vayas Hashem l'Sara, that Hashem did or made for Sarah. Af asisiv, ribui. Then we have the word af, which means also or even. And that's referring to a verse which speaks about, it hints to the four worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, the world of emanation, creation, formation, and action. And that verse is quoted at the end of Pirkei Avos, and it says in the verse that I, Hashem, have created, have formed, and then it says Af Asisiv, and I even made it. So in between the other worlds of creation and formation, there's an interruption of the word even, Af, I even made it. In other words, ribui, that's coming to include something else. When you have an extra word like that, that's coming to hint to something additional. Mivur b'targum, so it's explained on the translation, the Aramaic translation on that verse of Afasisiv, the koi, that it is referring to al hagiula, on the redemption, de le'asid lavoy, of the future to come, meaning the messianic redemption. So the Targum, it's not Onkelos, but it's also Aramaic. So the Targum on that verse says that the Af Asisiv is referring to the redemption of the future. Kacha Ye'aseh Lo'ish. Then we have another term. This is taken from Megillas Esther, that these are the instructions that King Achashverosh gave to Haman when he told him to take Mordechai, the Jew, and parade him through town. So he had him announce, he told Haman to go around and declare loud and clear that so shall be done to the man. Kacha ye'aseh la'ish. V'ayin Gemara Ksubes Tafei Sefer Med Aleph. And then he tells us another reference to look at is in the Talmud, Ksubes, page 5, bottom of A. Mishpacheso Adama, another term in the verse says the families of the land. Al derech ha'iredes lamato la'aretz, similar to a concept which is the idea of coming down. So this is pretty much references that he's showing us over here. Ach Adama al Shem Adam. Then he says, but now actually, what does it say? That Mishpacheso Adama, the families of the earth. That is probably referring to the verse in the book in Beis in Vayetze, where it says the blessing to Jacob, to the Jewish people, that they're going to be so many and they're going to spread out throughout the entire north, south, east, and west in all directions. And then it says, and your seed will be so many like the dust of the land. And all the families of the world will be blessed by you. And blessed by you, by the presence of the Jewish people, will be all the families of the earth. So now the word ha'adama, which means the earth or the ground or the land, actually is the same root as the word Adam. However, kishechoite, when this Adam sins, nikra al shem Adama, then he's called by the name of earth.
Oh.
Because he's a sinner. So now he's the earth. Uchshut tzaddik, but when he is righteous, nikra Adam, then he's called Adam, which is Adam Elyon, which is a term which Hasidus uses a lot. The original source is a negative one, but we give it the positive spin. It's a verse that I think Nebuchadnezzar, the king, he said it about himself. And he said, Adam Elyon, that I am similar, I am a deity, I'm like Hashem. So he meant it, in a
proud way.
In a profound, right, and it's a heresy. Yeah. But we're saying that it's Adam Elyon, that in fact, Adam is because of being similar to the one above. So we have two words here that we're playing with the word Adam. One is Adama, earth, and one is Adam Elyon, that I am like the one above, like Hashem. So if the person, the Adam, is a sinner, then we say Adama, then you're the ground, you're the earth. But if the person is righteous, then we say Adam Elyon, you are in fact like Hashem. I'm Mashakos Mizebedrush Mizbach Adama. Then he tells us, take a look at what is explained about this in the discourse on the verse at the end of Parshas Yisro in the book of Shmois of Exodus, where it says, Mizbach Adama, that Hashem instructs us to make an altar of earth, that the altar was filled with earth. Okay, so the end here is a little bit cryptic, unless, it's all these references. Okay, now we move on to the next piece. Top of page 2, Tov Kuf Lamed Aleph, which would be 531. Hine, behold, now we're going to talk about a particular famous king, very, very wicked king. Sancheriv Melech Ashur. Sancheriv, the king of Assyria, Ashur. Hoyomoired, he rebelled Be'amitis Achtusa Yisbarech, in the truth of the oneness of Hashem, blessed be he. More so than all and any other idolaters. Sancheriv rebelled against the concept of the oneness and the unity of Hashem more than anyone else, than any of the other idolatrous nations or kings. Because all idolaters, they know their master, they know of Hashem. They're just intending on rebelling against him. And that's actually said explicitly about the one that's officially the worst nation, Amalek. So it says that Amalek knew Hashem and rebelled against him. So normally we say that's a very bad thing, because they know Hashem and still they're rebelling against him. Here, the Tzemach Tzedek is bringing out about Sancheriv that he was actually worse, because all those negative, bad nations that are transgressing idolatry, they're worshiping Avodah Zarah, they know their master. For as the Gemara says, they refer to Hashem as the God of gods. They're not denying that he is the big master, Hashem, over all the other so-called deities. Dahainu, meaning, Shemoidim, they admit, the idolaters, the other nations, they admit, Bivchinas Achtus Peshuta. They agree, they admit that there is the concept of absolute oneness of Hashem, the very, very high level. Shu kadmein chuli, that he precedes everything. Before creation, before anything. There's nothing evolved from anything. Nothing exists. And they agree that there's this point beyond time, beyond space, beyond creation, beyond understanding, beyond anything, where he is and always was. Rak, the only problem is, so why they're idolaters? What's their big, grave mistake? She'oimrim, they say, the idolaters, Shehashkachasoi silek me'al haaretz, that he has, by his choice, removed his supervision, his providence from the world, from the earth. Ba'amram, by them saying, Azav Hashem es haaretz, that Hashem left the world. He could do whatever he wants. He created the world and all that's in it with every detail, and then he decided, I'm going to whatever, set it into motion, or leave it be itself, or create other small little gods, or whatever they say, and then he left the world into the hands of stars, constellations, angels, entities, powers, whatever they say. Liyos misnaheg, that everything should be run and conducted, hakoil, everything, al pi koichavim umazolis, all based on stars and constellations. Hamoishlim, which are governing, bedarkei hateva ha'enushi, chuli, hanushis, in the ways of nature. So they say Hashem created the stars, Hashem created the constellations, Hashem created nature. So he said, here, this is what I'm doing. Asher lazois, and for this, noisim es nafsham, they, the nations of the world, are bringing themselves la'avoid lakechavim umazolis, to serve, to worship the stars and constellations. U'lechol tzva shamayim, and to all the hosts of the heavens. Kidei, in order, lekabel, to receive, shefa, a flow of energy, of everything, v'chayus, and vitality, life, al yodam, through them, kayadua, as it's known. So that's a terrible thing. That's very forbidden. That is idolatry, but it's not like they're in denial. On the contrary, they claim that Hashem is so super good, and he's really beyond everything, and he preceded everything, and he's the source of everything, but then he decided to just leave it into the hands of, quote unquote, nature. Avla kol panim, but at any rate, kulam moidim, they all admit, shehu yisbarech, that he, blessed be he, elokad elokayachuli, is the God of gods, etc. Ukma shekasuv, and as the verse says, this is actually in the prayer of the Rosh Hashanah, the verse says, Mi lo yiracha, who will not fear you, Melech HaGoyim, the king over the nations. You know, they all fear him. The Chen Ksiv, and likewise the verse says, Ushmi Neira Bagoyim, and my name is awesome, is awe-inspiring amongst the nations. The Chen, and likewise the third verse, Hallelu es Hashem kol goyim chuli, praise Hashem all the nations, etc. A fourth verse, Molach Elokim al goyim, Hashem has ruled, has reigned over all the nations, over the nations. Uchehai Gavna, again that acronym Vav Chaf He Gimel. Uchehai Gavna, which means in Aramaic, in Gemara language, and like this. Rabbois many baksuvim, in verses. So Tzemach Tzedek just gave us a whole bunch of verses. He says there's so many more verses which bring out the concept that the Goyim recognize Hashem. And as it says in the Talmud, at the end of Tractate Menachos, Daf Kuf Yud Amud Aleph, page 110a. The Gam Paroi, and also Paroi, this terrible, terrible, evil Klipa, this impure king of Mitzrayim, he too, Loi Omar, did not say, Rak, all he said was, Mi Hashem asher eshma bekoiloi. Who is Hashem that I need to listen to him? He did not deny or question the existence of Hashem. He just said, who is Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, that I need to listen to, obey him? Shem Havaya Davka, hu shelo hikir. In other words, he's saying, I don't recognize Hashem, meaning the name, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. V'hisig. And he didn't grasp that. Avo Shem Elikim, but if you're going to use a different name, like Elokah Delakaya, so the name Elikim, Yoda V'hikir, that by all means, Paroi knew and recognized. He said, of course I know Hashem. You're just coming and you're talking to me in the name, he's telling Moshe, you're speaking in the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. I don't know of Hashem with that name. I know of Hashem with a different name, but that's all. But he wasn't saying, who is G-O-D? I never heard of him. Who's the creator? That was not Paroi's claim. And as the verse says, Molach Elokim al goyim chuli, Hashem reigned over the nations. V'hainu dekaru le'elokah delakaya kanal v'dal. And in other words, like we said, this is what the Talmud says, that they call him Elokah de Elokaya. Now, we're using the name Elokim. They call him the God of gods, like we said above, Vidal, which stands for Vidai Lamevin. And that is sufficient for one that understands. If you understand, what I said is sufficient. So that's all the Goyim, including the worst of them. They don't deny Hashem. They know of Hashem. Their major mistake is their philosophy that follows. Ach Sancheriv Melech Ashur. However, the exception to that, Sancheriv, the king of Ashur, Hu Asher Marad Yoiser, he is the one who rebelled more, Berum Levavoy, with the uplifting, the haughtiness of his heart. Be'amroi, for he said, Ani Beroi Vrichvi Alisi Marim Harim Chuli. I, with my many chariots, I went up to the heights of the mountains, Chulu, etc. Oh. And Valkei Nomar, therefore he said, Mi bechol elekeo haratzois asher hitzilu es artzam miyodi. Who amongst all of the mighty, or all of the gods of all of the lands, has been able to save their land from me? No one can stop me. Do you think Hashem will be able to save Jerusalem from me? He threw Hashem into the same basket, into the same category as all the other lahavdil false gods. He said Hashem is the same as all the rest. None of them mean anything. And I was able to conquer everything. I could conquer the whole world. So you think I can't take over Yerushalayim? Sham Siman Yudches Lamed Hey. So that's in the book of Kings 1, chapter 18, verse 35. Meaning, says it Tzemach Tzedek, Shishva Likim Chayim Lulekei Aratzes Eitz V'Even Chuli. That what his terrible thing did, his tremendous audacity was, he's comparing the one and only living God, Hashem himself, to the gods of the nations of the world, of the earth, which are trees, wood, sticks, stones, and all these things that they worship. This is an outstanding, what's the term? Blasphemous. This is beyond. He is the most blasphemous individual by making such statements. He's denying the living Hashem. He's saying different than all the other idolatrous nations say. He says Hashem is not the God of gods. He's just one of them. Okay, so then he brings another place where it says Sancheriv actually made himself into a deity. Shenemar, for it says Mi b'chol elokeo ha'arotzos. The Parshas Tzav, Remes Tov Pei, the Seif Parshas Pinchas, Taf Reish Nun Aleph Beis, Parshas Vaschanan, Seif Remes Tov Tov Mem Heu, V'Mekoimoy. Okay, the rest. Okay, now these are all references. The line starts Uvechinas. Uvechinas Klipa Kasha Kazu, And such a tough, such a hard klipa, such a hard shell, such a sancheriv, never existed. There never existed such a difficult klipa in all the kings and ministers of the nations of the world, of the idolatrous nations like Sancheriv. He's the worst. Asher al kain, therefore, there was no way to rectify this. Rak all you could do is you have to make sure that he, Sancheriv, does not have any ability to nourish, or that he has no source above in the spiritual realms, to be so completely separated from Hashem, like none other. And how is this done? Specifically through shaving. Shegilchu, Shem Adnai, Games Hazakan Chuli, Kaidua, Desidrachra Nikra Melech, Zakein Uchsil. They shaved the name of Aleph Daled Nun Yud, and now it's sort of, I think, a play on the word, because the Yetzer Hara is referred to by King Solomon as the old foolish king. So the word for old is Zakein, and likewise the beard would be called Zakan, which is the beard. So it basically means that you just have to get rid of Sancheriv completely.
So like the hair, like Esav was hairy, Yaakov is smooth.
And hair is the Yanika. Hair is what has its nourishment, like the hair on the head is nourishing from the brain. It's that which is beyond the intellect, whereas here you have to just totally cut him off.
Ah, very interesting. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
All right. You have a class now, right?
Yes, I do. And God willing, see you tomorrow night.
Mirz Hashem. Yeah.
Thank you. Be well.
Okay. Sure. All the best. Thank you.
Best.